The man behind Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, Titanfall, Apex Legends, and Jedi Fallen Order is now in charge of Battlefield. And saying that out loud actually sounds, well, not that bad, especially since Battlefield has been in desperate need of rescuing since Battlefield 5 released back in 2018. Now, during last week's investors call, EA's CEO Andrew Wilson was quoted as saying, "There's a lot of work that we've got to do." This was in regard to the Battlefield franchise, and it's clear that Vince is the man that he has chosen for the job. Now, in the past, it also appears that Andrew Wilson was more or less aware of the problems surrounding Battlefield 5's problematic launch, and yet those problems persisted with the release of Battlefield 2042. So hearing him say that there's a lot of work to do doesn't really instill any confidence. What does instill confidence was the Vince Zampella interview conducted by Tae Kim over on Barron's, where he asked Vince directly about his plans for the Battlefield franchise, and his responses reflected those of somebody with, well, unparalleled success and experience. It's a great interview and one worth reading for yourself. I'll leave a link to it below. Now, there's no question at this point that both Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042 have both become so much better with post-launch support. Given enough time, they would have both launched in pretty decent states. So if Vince can ship a polished game from day one, we're already in a much better place, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Battlefield is back, quote unquote. Conceptually, the game has to be much better, and the gameplay has to be much more fun, which Vince actually speaks to in the interview. Later, when Vince is asked about what went wrong with Battlefield 2042, he responds with this: "I think that they just strayed a little too far from what Battlefield is. They tried to do a couple of things that were maybe ambitious, grow the player count, etc. I don't think that they spent enough time iterating on what makes that fun. It's not inherently a bad idea. The way that they were set up and the way they executed just didn't allow them to find the best thing possible." Now, what I like so much about Vince's response here is that it really is a designer response. An inquisitive man who seeks to understand why and how. He doesn't look at 2042 and go, "It's not fun because it has 128 players." He looks at the 128 player count and says, "It's not a bad idea in itself," and sees that there are benefits to it and can imagine those benefits, but also sees that DICE was unable to achieve those through failure of execution. Lack of time and iterating on their ideas led to maps and modes and general balance that didn't feel like they were able to incorporate the benefits of player size increase. Now, as a Battlefield fan, there is no denying that the franchise has lost its way with the past two releases. It needs the classic feeling of teamwork, a tight-knit infantry and vehicle balance, destruction, amazing graphics, and to be constantly nudged further than it's ever been before. More destruction, more teamwork, more cool skill-based mechanics. It feels like the things that Battlefield tends to focus on for its next big evolutions are picked by marketing teams who maybe run keyword searches on what's popular with shooter games and not, well, the actual Battlefield players. Levolution, behemoths, tornadoes. Gimmicky things that can sell games but often get in the way of the actual gameplay itself. And I'm willing to bet that Vince is well aware of all of this. He describes himself as an actual gamer. As far as I can tell, he's not a dummy. He actually has a crazy good track record, and I'm hoping that he gets Battlefield. As part of the Battlefield fan base, we are in such a weird time right now. I think Battlefield is about to take a back seat while Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 dominates the FPS world for quite some time. We don't really have a good timeline for when the next Battlefield game ships. The rumors are suggesting 2024 for the next major title, and with such a big company shakeup that just happened at the start of the year, I wouldn't be surprised with that timeline at all. And that's probably a good thing for the most part. The last thing we need is another rushed Battlefield game. At the same time, as a Battlefield fan, I don't like waiting such a long time between good Battlefield content. I still hope that DICE decides to drop some fun support for 2042 beyond Season 1. I'm curious to see what happens to the player base after Modern Warfare 2 drops. I mean, I think anyone who is playing Battle Royales regularly might just be doing so already, so it's hard to say if Battlefield 2042 is really going to lose any more players to Modern Warfare 2, but we'll see. Now, something funny that Andrew Wilson said during the EA investor call that I wanted to leave here to spark some debate, since it is entirely subjective and super nerdy at the same time. When trying to instill some confidence in the Battlefield IP, he says, "In the world of entertainment, great IP is resilient, and we've seen movies not live up to the expectation of franchises. Star Wars might be one such franchise. And then you can see what happens when you get the right creative team involved, how they can completely reinvent and grow a franchise." Now, using the Star Wars IP here is an interesting example for sure, because he's sort of referring to Disney grabbing Star Wars, launching the new trilogy of movies, those being seen as generally bad, and then grabbing some new talent, launching the TV shows, and those being seen as generally good. I believe that's what he's trying to say anyway. I think it's funny for a number of reasons, because from my perspective anyway, I think one of the best pieces of Star Wars content to release in the past 10 years was actually Vince Zampella's Jedi Fallen Order video game. The gameplay was fun, but honestly, the narrative, the characters, and the writing was goddamn fantastic, and it puts literally everything from the shows and the movies to shame, in my opinion. Personally, I've been generally pretty bored with the Star Wars shows that Disney has been putting out. I enjoy the canon, but actually the pacing, the scripts, and the action sequences just really haven't done it for me. Sometimes while watching them, I think I'm getting kind of old because they're just not entertaining me, but then I'll watch like a movie like The Northman or Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I'm like, yeah, now this is an awesome action movie. And then I'm like, oh yeah, Star Wars is just really not doing it for me these days. And I love the universe and the canon and the characters, but just the way it's written and acted and the action is just so lame by comparison to like what other directors and franchises are doing these days. Is just not cutting it. So a small part of me worries that if Andrew Wilson's measure of success for Star Wars is based on the success of the TV shows is what he wants for Battlefield, then that's not exactly ideal for me. Luckily, Andrew Wilson's take on Star Wars is far less important than the fact that he's actually put Vince in charge of Battlefield, which might be the most important decision he's made for the franchise in the past 10 years. Vince Zampella is also the man who made one of the best pieces of Star Wars content in the past 10 years, in my opinion. And if there is one takeaway from this entire video, it's to go play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It is a fantastic game. And the second takeaway from this video is that we probably have a long way to wait for the next major installment of Battlefield, but that it's probably a good thing, and that the person in charge may very well be one of the best people for the job. Of course, time will tell, and my reasoning is based on the man's track record and the interview. But what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear in the comments. And if you'd like to watch a video about what I want from the next Battlefield games, check out this video here. I talk about dinosaurs, a Battlefield meme as old as time. Well, at least as old as Battlefield 3, I think. Anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.